So it's Pride Month. We're ending it with the Reverend Ranjit K. Mathews. Talk to us a little bit about your family, your family of origin.
Yeah, Kingston. Uh, my family. So, I start with my father and mother, and Koshi Mathews, who you heard, I think, about 2 weeks ago, and my mom, Susan Mathews, and Manju, who's on here, and Kingston, I think probably like maybe most families. I won't speak for a lot of folks, but growing up sort of second generation Indian Americans in the United States, and trying, at least for me, trying to figure that out and what that means in terms of walking and growing and all that sort of thing. And my sister and I not having a close relationship at all until I go to college, and that's where we start to connect and have a connection. But all through that time, feeling the warmth of my mother and father in a beautiful way. And not that we would get really intimate about a lot of things, but I knew, and maybe I would speak for Manju, that we knew that we had a foundation of love from them that authenticated our experience and was so important for us. I didn't quite understand it then. It's only in retrospect, Kingston, that I know it now, right?
Yeah.
And how powerful a foundation of love is. And I'm just really fortunate now to have sort of expanded and drawn into that love with my wife Joanna and our son Dhruv, and and love is such a bedrock for our family and who we want to be, as we move into this life. So um, it's easy to say that, but family of origin, family of connection that's underscored with love was so big for me, and
Yeah.
it helped me become, who I would want to be today. Yeah, I guess that's what I would share.
Were you raised in a Desi community?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we in some sense, right? I grew up in Randolph and Sharon, Massachusetts, and because of that, we were connected to this group called the Kerala Association of New England, right? And so there were, a number of Malayali families around Boston and around New England, and because my parents were first generation, just coming here from Kerala, they had a group of family members, right? Like as I'm sure many of us would know, who they connected with on the weekends, and that for us was so important, just to have these friendships, right? And
Yeah.
have that support, whether we're hanging out on a Friday night or Saturday night, but that was really important. And in a place where maybe in high school, middle school, all the things, we could be somewhat disconnected and sort of walking a place where our identity, at least our Indian identity, was a little bit different. It was nice to connect with, with other Indian kids over the weekend. So that was important. And, still right now, I see three of those people from that time are my best friends. And we hang out, we go to different cities every year, just the four of us. So that's very meaningful.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. That's so good. It's very good. Did you grow up going to church? Was that part of your life?
Yeah, we went to Martoma Church. We went to. I mean, we.
For the folks that don't know, what is that? What is Marthoma Church?
So the Martoma Church is a historic branch of Christianity that started in Kerala way back, when St. Thomas came down to Kerala and was an apostle of Jesus and evangelized in southern India in Kerala. And so, the Martoma Church is older than Western Christianity, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And has its roots there. And I knew so little of it when I was younger, and still only know a little bit of it now. I know my great grandfather was a healer in the Martoma Church, and
Hmm.
my dad would speak of him, and I know my mom also was a part of the Martoma Church, so it was important. But my dad was really came to the U.S. to explore a vocation in ministry, and so we went to different churches across Massachusetts. Right, we went to the Martoma Church. I think certainly for culture and also for religious experience. We went to the Acrovite Church. We went to the Church of South India. We also went to, you know, more local American churches also, right? To have an experience. We went to our local Congregational Church in Sharon. But it was only when my father found a home within the Episcopal Church that we sort of settled down in some place.
Yeah.
I,
Did you, when religion was introduced to you, when Christianity was introduced to you, did you always embrace it? Was there something that you always just embraced and made it part of your life? Did you come to it later on?
no, I mean, it was later on, Kingston, really. I mean, maybe, and maybe this is true for so many of us here. It's just I would, I didn't know Malayalam, right? So like, I knew a little bit of, and whenever we'd have Lent or something at our house, and maybe there was some service and everything would be in Malayalam, and there I was, and I had no idea, and I would just, all these sort of frustrations around, you know, um, putting our knee to the ground, and I would just do it out of sake of following what the people in my living room were doing. So
Yeah,
it's not like I was very thoughtful at all
yeah,
or a thinking person. I was just kind of going along with the flow,
yeah.
and yeah, I wasn't very. I did what a kid would do, maybe.
Did you think when you were a kid that one day you'd end up being Father Ranjit?
No. Yeah, Kingston. Yeah, you can call me Father Ranjit or you can call me Ranjit. But
Yeah,
no, I didn't have any idea about that. I honestly thought I wanted to be a rich businessman. That was my.
yeah,
I mean, first it was to be a garbage man.
yeah.
Garbage truck driver. I thought that was pretty cool.
The
Early
trucks
on,
are amazing. I've always wanted to drive a garbage truck,
yeah. So
even
I
now.
mean, I love just jumping up on it and moving, and then a little bit later on, I wanted to be, I wanted to have some money. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you think about God and the way God was introduced to us, right? Introduced to us either through your parents, a grandparent, a pastor, right? But there's and your our own understanding of what God is, right? Or the God of our imagination, if you will, right? It
mhm,
differs from like person to person, right? So
mhm.
what would you say is talk to us a little about the God of your imagination.
Yeah, the God of my imagination. Kingston, I would say that the God of my imagination, I would only know that because of the way in which, I came to know God, right?
Yeah,
And only in that sense of understanding my own belovedness would I be able to even construct the God of my own imagination. And so I was at St. Michael's Episcopal Church in Milton, Mass, for a little bit of time, and
yeah,
uh, you know, um, enjoyed that a little bit before heading off to college.
yeah,
And I was looking for an Episcopal church or Episcopal tradition to dive into, and I couldn't find it.
yeah,
And maybe this is something we'll get into, but I think it's my own experiences, Kingston, that have opened up my own mind, and certainly with people,
yeah,
who have pushed me, who have challenged me
yeah,
to to see a God of liberation, right? that would call and know me as whole, as Ranjit, who is whole and beloved as Ranjit, and not anything more, not anything less, but
Yeah.
and I came to know that through several experiences in my life, and that would be the God of my imagination, a God of liberation, who would know us in the most intimate parts of ourselves and call us into becoming the most fullest part of our humanity and who we are to be, in our potential. Right. So that is, and who would want that for every single being, but all the creatures in this world, that would go beyond humanity and out into creation.
And just the way that we all are, right?
Yeah, as we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I went to GW, and I was
Yeah.
looking for an Episcopal tradition, and I couldn't find one. So I ended up on one Thursday evening seeing that InterVarsity Christian Fellowship was having something up on the fourth floor of the Marvin Center, and I went up there, and I couldn't find it, but I heard some Christian music, and so I walked into that room, which was dark, and I walked in, and I don't know if it was very thoughtful or not, but I, I walked in, and it was dark, but they were playing some Christian music on the on the wall, and I sort of felt moved to sing, and I joined in, and I felt very emotionally moved, right?
Yeah.
And then they turned the lights on, and there were a number of what Asian people, Asian American, Korean American folk, and
Yeah.
over the course of that year, I came to know them. They came to know me in a sense of community,
Sure.
and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But little did I know, Kingston, that the theology, or maybe their understanding of the Bible, was much more traditional,
Yeah.
and had an understanding of theology that was more literal.
Yeah.
And so over the course of my time and my experience in that place,
Yeah.
I was told it's important to cut myself off from so many of my friends who were Hindu,
Yeah.
Muslim,
Yeah.
Jain. Don't go clubbing.
Yeah.
Don't your body is sinful. And so it was really a fear-based theology that, and so I didn't do all of that. I cut so much of. I mean, we were talking about hip hop. I gave away so much of my hip hop music to my Pakistani Muslim friend, roommate, right? And I didn't go clubbing. I didn't do any of the things because I was so caught up in a theology that said no, all of that is of the world and no good, and that
Was there a part of you at that time when you were being exposed to this that there was a conflict and you were like, no, God's supposed to accept me and love me just who I am, right? My body is not a sin, right? It's okay for me to listen to hip hop music.
yeah, there was a part of me. I mean, and I know my father, who and also my mother, they were always there, sort of kind of walking alongside, and maybe dad on his part
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of knew what I was going through, but there was definitely a part of me that was questioning. It's like, this can't be right. These are my close friends, even now, and am I really evil? Am I really bad? Um, so yeah, there was a part of me, but I didn't have people around me, Kingston, who I guess at that point who I don't know, I could see another way.
Yeah.
Maybe I just wasn't looking, or I didn't,
Yeah.
And it's not like these folk that I was a part of were bad. It was just they were, and it's not what I'm saying. It's just that they were part of something that wasn't allowing my full and whole self to come out, to be who I am, you know?
And I imagine like that also creates a lot of static, right? Because you know what, you mentioned your father, who I think is such a powerful person, just like you and just like your sister Manju. He talked a lot about like, you know, in the beginning about being God's beloved, right? Uh, and I imagine that, you know, when you feel like you can't be just yourself, that there's a lot of static and you don't really feel like that belovedness, right? So talk to us a little bit about when did you feel your belovedness and how is it connected to God is love?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thanks for the question, Kingston. I so I you know, that was sort of my sophomore year in college. So that was like 99,
Yeah,
right? And feeling all the feels there and feeling, you know, judged and all the things. And I remember my family and I traveling to India in 99 in the summer, and we'd typically go every 4 years or so. And so we went in 99, and I remember sitting with my father, you know, on the veranda of my grandparents' house, and you know, this dude, you know, dad was just you know, he was a broader person than I was at the time, much more, right? And here I was having that tension of like, damn, this is who I am, but then like I have all this static of like
yeah,
who I'm being told I should be, right? And so then my dad was like sitting next to me, you know, he said, you know, we're sitting talking about religion, and you know, he was a wise guy, as you know, and you know, he said to me, he was saying like, Ranjit, you know, I you know, do you really believe that out of a population of 1 billion people here in India, that you know, and only 3% are Christian, do you think that everybody else is going to hell? You know, and it that shit sort of woke me up, right? It just like, and then he was like, because that's not the type of God that I believe in, you know. And for me, at that stage in my, I don't know, in my how I was believing in my faith, it really was an important question to open me up
yeah,
and get me thinking in a way that was just right for me. And maybe
yeah,
he was walking alongside me that whole time. And you know, and then a couple of weeks later, you know, my family and I were traveling in the in a city called Mysore,
yeah,
and then I was we went to this one church. I'd like to call it Saint Agnes and Philomena. That's what's in my head. And we went there, and it was all, you know, it's a sort of a it's a historic place with the British and with colonial India and all that sort of thing. And so we walked into this church and we walked downstairs and we took off our shoes and we were sort of oohing and eyeing at all the, you know, all the things that were there. And then as I walked up the stairs and as my parents went up and Manju went up, and then at the top of the stairs were two girls who had leprosy, right? And one of them, you know, I just remember very particularly, one of them was on um, a skateboard, and I was like maybe two stairs below her, and she was above, and I just remember Kingston just looking at her, just so deeply in her eyes, and she peering at, you know, staring at me, and you know, and then she took her hand and she touched my foot, which was bare, right? And then she put it to her mouth, right? And you know, Kingston, you know, I felt as if that she was seeing in me, just saying, Ranjit, just be who you are. It was like in her touch, she was just saying, Ranjit, you know, don't be all these things that people are telling you to be. Be Ranjit, and you are beloved as you are. And in, you know, in some sense, I also felt like just come and be here with me, you know, and fight for justice here with me. And I was feeling like I was seeing God in her, and and so that was really my sense of being beloved, really being just as I was, as the person who loved hip hop, person who you know um, loved my friends who were not Christian, who believed in a God more of my imagination at that point that was liberatory than
Mm-hmm.
anything else. And so that experience really changed me, in a deep way to to lead me into the ministry, right? And to share that love that I experienced in my own self
Mm-hmm.
with other people, and in a way that was hopefully just about walking alongside people and honoring who they are.
It's powerful, right? Because she showed you love,
Yeah, right.
right? She showed you love, and we all that's what we all Christians should be doing, right? Showing everyone love. There's a quote that you shared with us, and I want you to sort of expand a little bit and talk a little bit more about it. And the quote is, "They will know you are Christian by your love."
Yeah.
Why is that an important quote that you shared? And can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, Kingston, I think uh, they will know we are Christian by our love. And I know for me, I can talk a whole lot and I can preach a whole lot, but it makes a difference when you go out and do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about, we can, even now, right now, maybe especially for our Desi community,
Mm-hmm.
maybe no matter where we can say the slogan Black Lives Matter. But how often will we look at the demands of the Black Lives Matter movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really push to make it real, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the United States. And so I can talk a lot. It's There's a difference in being a person of faith and a Christian who really embodies
Mm-hmm.
it in practice. And that's hard, right? Because it's hard to do that. It's hard to do that outside, and then it's hard to do that in our family, right? Our extended family, our broader family, of of doing that to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and no matter what the pushback we would get, So, but it's about walking the walk, right? And then if we don't walk the walk, then in some senses, then I'm a real hypocrite. I know I fail in that respect, and yet I try to get up and walk again. You know, but I'm always failing on that route. So
No, you're not.
get up and try again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Talk to us a little bit about the Bible. Talk to us a little bit about the Bible. Talk to us a little bit about Christianity, and talk to us a little bit about God's love, right? So if you just heard the term God's love, what comes up for you, and what do you want to share with this community about God's love?
yeah, I think that's really important for me. That what I would want to share is that um, God's love is paramount, and I think I really want to live into, I think, what Koshi Mathews and what Winnie Varghese said, that God's love is paramount more than anything. And throughout the Bible, and I think Winnie said this so beautifully last week, is that you see so many instances of God's love throughout the Bible, right? And I think, more than anything, more than any dogma or creed or anything, it is how we experience that in our lives. In our Episcopal or Anglican or this tradition, we have this thing called the three-legged stool. One, one,
What's that?
one pillar of that is tradition, and
Mm-hmm.
another pillar of that is scripture. Another pillar of that is experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I, I guess I would want people to know in the depth of their own experience God's love, and how God loves all the parts of themselves, even
Mm-hmm.
parts of themselves that that we would consider less than, but that
Mm-hmm.
it is God, and God loves our whole self, right? When we walk into a church, it isn't about leaving behind something, right? We don't leave behind sexuality. We don't leave behind our family. We don't leave behind our politics. We bring our whole selves into the sanctuary, and I think we're called to love God with all of our heart, all of our strength, all of our mind, and all of our soul. So
Mm-hmm.
that means bringing our whole self, and so that's what I would share with the community here, is that how important it is to bring our whole selves to any community, and that's what God would want for us, right? God didn't tell us to just, no, you keep that aside, or you bring our whole, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we should espouse on a Sunday morning and live out, on a Monday afternoon, right?
Yeah.
That's important to me, and I think we failed historically. The church has,
Yeah.
not only with our LGBTQI folk, but also more broadly in living that out. We can,
Yeah.
we can talk a whole game and sing a lot of words that are so transcendent and deep and all the things.
Yeah.
How does that get translated during the week, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the big gap is, Kingston. You know, um,
Talk to us a little bit about how do you access God's love. I feel like a lot of folks have a hard time thinking about how to access God's love when they feel that there's something wrong with them, right? When they feel like uh, uh, when they have problems accessing it.
yeah, I'll tell a couple of stories there, and I only can think about it, Kingston. It's only through people, right?
Yeah.
And you know, people and prayer practice, and I know for me that when I move into a space of meditation or contemplation, when I'm like quiet with God, allowing God's eyes, God's grace to touch all parts of me in maybe 30 or 40 minutes a day, that is
Hmm.
moving, and just showing up in a space of to not expect anything but to experience God's love, right? And how often I'll put that off and not do that on a day to day because I get caught up in, oh, I got stuff to do on a Monday.
Hmm.
Primary invitation is to show up in prayer, and I think that for me that just means silence.
Mm.
There's this great mystic by the name of John of the Cross who says
Hmm.
that silence is God's first language.
Hmm.
So how do we lean into that space where that intimacy where it's so hard to put into words? I'll also say that when after that experience in India, I spent some time in Madrid, you
Hmm.
study abroad, and then I went to LA, right?
Hmm.
And because I wanted to do something Christian with my life at that point. I felt called and moved, and that's where I got into hip hop. I got to LA because of Winnie, right? And Winnie invited me out to this place called Hope in Hollywood, sort of hip hop ministry, and work with young people, and they work with me in sort of working that expression of love out in Hollywood, right? And that's where I met Winnie, who suggested and said, "Well, if you're thinking about going into ordained ministry, why don't you think about Union Theological Seminary?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I met this man by the name of Michael Cunningham, who just embraced me for who I was, Kingston. And it's easy to say, how people embrace you, but that's where I found God's love, right?
Yeah.
It's in people. It's an
Yeah.
embrace.
Yeah.
I want to share this anecdote, which I think shares a little bit about God's love. It was like I was doing some anti-war organizing during seminary, and I was also dating somebody, and I just come back from South Africa, and a lot of it was hard, and I somehow through all of that, I ended up getting a ruptured appendix,
Oh my goodness.
right? And I had to go home and back to Sharon, Mass, from New York, and spend about a week with my parents. And then I came back, and I came back to seminary. I didn't want to come back to seminary. I was like, no, I don't want to come back. I want to stay home with my parents and feel the love. And I remember that Monday morning when I was back in New York, and I it was like maybe 6:30 in the morning, and I get a call from my father, and well, I get a call, and I get so irritated because it's 6:30 in the morning. Like, who's calling me this early in the morning? And I pick it up, and it was my father, right?
Yeah.
And he said, he just said my name in a really the only way that he could. And for 45 minutes, he just listened. He just listened to me in a very powerful way that was just all about presence.
Yeah.
And I at that point, Kingston, before that, I did not want to get,
Yeah.
but because of that movement, because of that presence of dad picking up the phone and being present with me, I wanted to get up.
Yeah.
And that shared love from me through my dad at that point made me not only want to get up but also do what he does with other people. You know,
Yeah.
and and I was moving. So I can only feel that through other people. I can only experience God's love through other people. And But I also think it's important to be, forgive the noise. I think it's also important to be sort of critical about who you're connecting and who you surround yourself with. Um, when you're in college, when you're in high school, I think I was very impressionable about who I hung out with, right? And didn't maybe question it as much. And I think it's important in realizing that voice is within me to honor that, right? And not be led by other people who stand outside of myself.
Yeah.
Surround myself with people who honor who I am, and that I can trust them to hold me accountable to be who I am and who I need to be, right? And,
Yeah.
and I think that's really hard, not only in high school but in college. Part of me just like, and I wonder for so many of us as second generation Indian Americans, we you know I wonder how we went through high school and college and maybe not have as visible a connection with our parents, or it's hard, right? And having people who can honor who you are in the very depths is so important, but not easy to find.
Yeah. But I think that's an important thing that you had mentioned in the beginning of the question, is that you can access God's love through silence and through prayer, right? And that's something that's available for each and every one of us, whether we are the queer or trans person in the family, or we're the family member trying to figure out how to navigate now, like, how to deal with like acceptance and community and God and religion and all of that, right? So you're saying start with silence and start with prayer.
Yeah, so, I mean, for me, silence was really good. I know that when I was in college, I got into like spoken word a little bit in terms of going out to a park and engaging and talking with God in a way that might have been a little bit odd for people seeing me talk out loud. But that was a form of prayer for me. Um, I think what I also want to share with this community is that how important it is to be intimate with ourselves. And I think so often, maybe, and I don't know about my parents, but even when I talk about knowing other people and being known by them, I think it's important to know ourselves, right? And so often we don't often talk about, you know, our bodies, right? With our families, you know, we may struggle to do that with our parents, right? And I think there's a whole lot of shame around that. And it, you know, so uh, you know, what I want to say is that our bodies are not bad. Our bodies are beautiful
Yeah.
and are and meant to be celebrated, right?
Yeah.
And we can know God's love through our bodies as well,
Yeah.
and I think we come to experience that more and more outside once we come to experience that in ourselves, right? And I think that's just really important to how we and who we are out in the world.
Yeah.
That sense of intimacy, right?
Yeah.
And I think we become stronger. And when God calls us whole, it isn't just one part of ourselves. It isn't just the political part of ourselves. It isn't just the academic. It's the sexual, right?
Yeah.
It's all of it. And I think navigating those things, navigating shame, um, I think the church has done a really horrible job around that, and has made people feel, irrespective around sexuality or gender understanding, but has a lot of baggage there. And it's important that we know the God who goes beyond church, a God
Yeah.
who gives us in our most intimate understandings.
I mean, that's such an important thing you're talking about, and we should definitely have a discussion around that, because I think that for a lot of folks, they have so much guilt around it, around what pleasure is, and around your body and intimacy, right? Because you think that you have to be a certain way or do certain things, and everything else is, against God's will, right? So, no, it's a very, very good, it's a very good point. It's a very good point. We're going to start with the Q&A. So please feel free to jump into the chat and just start typing in your questions while we start getting some questions in from our audience.
Okay.
There are a lot of folks that might be listening, that might be participating, that really are struggling with being a part of a church, that are struggling with accessing God's love, right? Because they think that their existence is a sin, right? They're being trans is a sin, them being queer is a sin, and they're having a hard time with it, right? What do you say to those people that are struggling to access God's love, that might be struggling with going to church, that might be struggling with their relationship with God?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would just, my that's just really sad for me,
Yeah,
and hard, and I guess the only thing that I would say, and it comes across as such a throwaway line, but that God loves each and every one of you, right? And and I cannot speak for every church, and all the painful experiences that so many have gone through, and I would say that if you have experienced that pain, that is not for you to just take, right? There is theology, that is throughout, parts of churches that say that we continue to suffer within churches or within places, and that maybe that is part of God's will for us. And I would say no to that. And I think that's really bad theology, and God doesn't want us to suffer for any particular redemptive thing, and our own suffering just for suffering does not work. So I would invite people who have experienced that in whatever churches they may experience as hard as it is, if it's not, if you're continuing to experience that, to leave, and to connect with people of faith who might be outside of the tradition, but are Christian nonetheless, and have a warm and embracing understanding of God. It's not for any one of us to just go into a place and suffer.
Mm-hmm.
No, and yeah. So that's what I would say. And
Very good. Very good. Very good. There are a lot of parents that are listening. Uncles that might be listening, aunts might be listening, grandparents that might be listening, that might be having a very difficult time right now accepting their queer kids, their trans kids, that might be having a difficult time accessing God's love right now, right? And what would you say to them about God's love and acceptance of their LGBTQI family member, and God's love for them, right? Because they're going through something very tough as well. Can you talk a little bit to the parents and family members that are listening?
yeah, what I would say to parents is to look at your child, and look at them just as your child, and how you loved them right from the beginning when they were born, and nothing can change that. And just how important it is to remember that love that you first had right from the beginning, right from when he, she, they were born,
Yeah.
and that love hasn't changed. It may come out and come out in a different way, in a different color and understanding, but that love is still the same. You
Yeah.
know, how we express ourselves are is different, right? And I also would say is that it's important to do our own self-reflection about our own lives, and how even if we do a careful sort of anatomy of ourselves, how we're also so different in so many different ways, right? And maybe can we look back at our lives when we were accepted, when we were embraced by somebody, and we have that sense of vulnerability of sharing that part of ourselves with somebody, and we didn't know if they would accept that, and how we were embraced. And if we can lean back, if family members, if parents can lean back into that experience, that might give them the muscle to understand what it meant and what it means to their own children to do that. I'm it's not the same, but I'm sure all of us have felt that sense of being not accepted. And if we can lean into that space and remember that, and then look with the eyes upon our children, with eyes of love, that may be a space. So I think it's an opportunity to look back at our own lives and be reflective. Because there were spaces where we were, as parents, they were not accepted either, right?
Yeah.
And to remember that vulnerability around that, how vulnerable it is to share something so intimate.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Very good. So I'm going to do an official close, and then we will just be us talking, but just for the recording is going to end now. So for the folks that are listening, the recording, thank you so much for taking the time out to listen to this. This is a discussion series that's ongoing in with lots of different faith and family discussions that we've been having. We have support groups. We have a WhatsApp group for parents. You are not alone. So if you are a queer person or a trans person that's looking for community, we are here for you. We can get you help. We can get you love. We can get you support, and lots of resources. If you are a parent that is struggling with accepting your queer or trans child, you are not alone. There are lots of parents that are part of this organization that are happy to talk to you, that are happy to Zoom with you, that are happy to build community with you. So please go to our Facebook, go to our Instagram, find us, get to know us, and just know that you are not alone. We love you, and God loves you. So thank you so much, and we will be talking and seeing you very soon.